Welcome back to Raw the podcast. I'm your host, Allie, founder of TheCheekyClean and Conscious Cart, resources for helping consumers shop and live better and longer. And I'm here today with Gretchen Spetz. Gretchen is a registered and licensed dietitian nutritionist and a functional nutrition specialist who helps midlife adults approach GLP-1 weight loss the smart way. With over a decade of clinical experience, including work at the Cleveland Clinic, university hospitals, and her private practice, The Functional Kitchen, she specializes in a health-first approach to weight loss and building habits that stick. After navigating her own challenges with hyperthyroidism, IBS, and insulin resistance, she now blends science and personal experience to guide others towards steady, sustainable metabolic health. Gretchen, welcome to the podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
Thank you for being here. I'm so excited to talk more with you. I wanted to just give the community a little overview on how we met and what I think makes Cleveland so cool. So we attended one of Sante Supper Club's events. Which for those of you who aren't familiar, I want to have Emily back on. I had her on to talk about Drink Flourish, her non-alcoholic bartending business. But that was a long time ago before I even had the studio. And she's done so much now in partnership with Verbena in bringing these purposeful dinner parties to the Cleveland area. And so I had attended one in Rocky River this past summer, one of their last ones, I think. And I met you there and we were just like chatting about, our lives and what we do for work. And we had a lot of really similar interests and mission. And I've been following you since. And like I said before the podcast started, love your content and feel like you have a wealth of knowledge to share. So it's been so nice to connect with you and now learn more about your experience.
Oh, likewise. And I was so tickled when you reached out because I too started following you. I listened to some of your podcast episodes. I was like, I love this. This is one of my favorite things about Cleveland. It's a big, small city or a small, big city, however you want to think about it. And it's so fun to be able to connect with people.
It is. It's really powerful. And the whole purpose of the podcast is to share raw experience. And there's so much, even as I was saying in your bio, that we go through personally that actually becomes the fuel for our mission or way we show up in the world collectively. And, it's one thing to kind of be in your own world and build a business. And it's another thing to connect with other people in that intimate way. So I agree. I think Cleveland has a lot of big city value to offer, but also this really unique access to community that's so powerful.
Love it.
Love it. So I'm so excited to learn more about you and really the work that you do. You share a lot on social media. And what I was saying that I love about your content is as a woman in my, I guess, midlife, is that what that would be considered?
35 to 65. Yeah. It's a broad range.
Okay, I'm in the young midlife. Cool. I talk a lot on the podcast, but then also just in general, I'm really interested in hormone balance and eating in order to fuel my body properly. Train a lot. And I think there's so much noise in the world right now and always has been really, with like certain diets and this or that and like blanket statements. And, the more I've learned and had different doctors and people of expertise on is that all of our bodies are so different. And there really is such an opportunity to eat for our own health. And your content is always really, really relatable and applicable and not overwhelming, which is rare in the social media space.
I really appreciate you saying that. I really strive to be extremely realistic. I'm a real person too, living a real life. I don't have some 10-step morning routine. I've got 2 kids and we just added a puppy to our conglomerate here, for better or for worse. He's 3 months old. So I'm living a real life too. And nothing frustrates me more is content where it seems like somebody is up on a pedestal and has reached the summit of, oh, I do this perfectly. I don't think anybody really lives like that.
Totally.
And we can really connect to the realism of it all when we keep it real.
Exactly. I really appreciate it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how you got into this field. And are you from Cleveland originally?
I am, yes.
Amazing. You grew up in the West Side?
I did. I grew up in Bay Village. I left Bay Village and I did my undergrad at the University of Notre Dame and swore I would never come back to Ohio, let alone Bay Village.
Totally.
And Bay Village in particular, I feel like and Cleveland in general, has a way of just pulling you back ever so slowly. So I worked in government / And I also worked for a small Catholic social justice nonprofit
Interesting.
out of undergrad.
Yeah.
And when I was working for the then Governor Strickland of Ohio, so I'd moved, see, sucked you back. I moved to Columbus. And at that point, I realized, you know what? I really would rather work with people than paper.
Yeah.
And I was writing RFPs and I was managing all these programs on paper, and it was really not very fulfilling for me at the end of the day. So I had what I call my quarter life crisis. And, I was 23 at the time. And I was like, oh my gosh, what am I going to do when I grow up? This isn't working. And I thought, well, I love food. I was always experimenting with food, having people over for meals, doing all sorts of stuff. And I thought, well, I could be a chef. I'm not really a night owl. I don't enjoy being up at night. I don't enjoy being in the weeds. So I thought, ooh, this is probably not the right career path. And then I didn't even know a dietitian existed until this quarter life crisis at 11 p.m. one night. I was Googling and voila, you can be a dietitian. And I actually started out in undergrad in pre-med.
Interesting.
And had this realization that what I really wanted to do was preventive care. And so the path that made the most sense was family practice or internal med. And I realized I was going to be 30, getting out of school, and most of my job was going to be working with people who have colds or URIs or giving out blood pressure medication.
Totally.
And that did not feel very fulfilling to me. So I'm really glad at that point at 18, 19, I had the wherewithal to say, nah, we're not going to do this right now.
Absolutely.
And then I was able to come back and become a dietitian and I think be able to step into a preventive role in a very meaningful way.
Absolutely. That's so powerful. So you became a registered dietitian then after your undergrad?
Yes.
In your mid-20s-ish?
Yep, mid-20s. I went to Case Western Reserve and
Very
I have
cool.
my master's in public health nutrition, actually.
So badass. So did you initially start working as a dietitian in affiliation with another like Cleveland Clinic or something like that?
Yes. So my very first job was with Lake Health out in Lake County. And then I worked for a number of years at the Cleveland Clinic, mostly in bariatrics.
Got it.
And then after my oldest was born, I wanted to work part-time. So I moved over to University Hospitals and worked in outpatient endocrinology there.
Wow, interesting. And how did you come to start your own practice?
It was after my second child was born.
Okay.
So after she was born, I went back to the hospital and I was actually told that my appointment times were being shortened to 20 minutes. And it's really, really hard in a hospital setting to be able to be effective when somebody needs to get in the door and then or get checked in and then get weighed and then finally make it to your office. Oh my gosh, you're lucky if you have 15 of those minutes left.
Totally.
And what we're talking about when we're talking about behavior changes is so much more than handing somebody a PDF and saying, follow this. So I thought, you know what? I could do this better myself. Let me try it. So my mother, who is the best, was watching my two little ones. And I was working a day and a half at the hospital. And another half day, I rented space in a chiropractor's office. And within just about 3-4 months, I was able to leave my hospital job and focus solely on the functional kitchen, which is my private practice.
So cool. So how has that transition been for you? I mean, as someone who's also left a more corporate structured role and started something on my own, I think it has some pros and cons, right? But I'm sure a level of fulfillment perhaps that maybe you didn't have before. I mean, what has been kind of your experience as it comes to doing it on your own versus having the backing of a more corporate setting?
Such a great question. Whenever you go into any sort of entrepreneurial role, it requires you to wrestle with your strengths and weaknesses in a way that other jobs, I don't think, challenge you the same way. And it also gives such opportunity for growth at the same time. So it's been a true adventure. It's been about 10 years.
Wow,
it's been,
that's so
actually, no, I take that back.
impressive.
I lied. Sorry. It's been about 8 years, a little over 8 years since I started. And it's been an adventure and it's taken lots of different forms. When I first started, I saw people, like I mentioned, in the chiropractor's office, so entirely in person. I then graduated to renting office space within a group of actually therapists, so that was great. And then after COVID, I ended up taking everything virtual, and I've stayed virtual ever since.
So all your patients are virtual.
All my patients are virtual. I primarily work with people using a functional nutrition approach who are, of course, looking for support on their weight loss journey with or without medication. And then also people dealing with digestive issues, specifically IBS, autoimmune conditions where they would like some nutrition support because that can be such a powerful tool. Also metabolic issues like PCOS, prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, anything kind of in that spectrum. So those are primarily the people that I work with. And most of those people are in that 35 to 65 year age range. And having my own practice has really given me the opportunity to structure things in different ways. But bottom line, the reason I left the hospital setting was so that I could see people more effectively, which means seeing people more frequently, doing check-ins that aren't just face-to-face visits, and also being able to spend the time. That is the medicine in itself.
You mentioned behavioral change as being a big part of what yields success when it comes to the work that you do. Why do you feel like it requires more than what, say, the hospital setting can give?
We as humans are uniquely, amongst all the animal species, in a relationship with food. There are a couple other animals that don't just eat to live. We live to eat on one level or another. And really making sure that we are fostering, repairing, however you want to phrase it, a good relationship with food. And really that opens the door to, why am I eating? What's going on with my nervous system regulation? Because that is such a reason why we eat. What is going on with my capacity at the moment? Am I getting fast food all the time because I am just beyond maxed? And is there a way that I can structure things differently so I can not spend all my time in the kitchen, but be able to eat more unprocessed, minimally processed foods? So it's never just about like, oh, I just have to eat these foods and then I'm fine. There's always reasons behind what we're eating. I'll share a powerful story. There was a patient I once had, and we were working for a very long time on her sugar intake. We addressed her gut health. We did all sorts of different things. And at the end of the day, she didn't like going in her kitchen because it was really cluttered. She was living with another family member, and there was just too much stuff in the kitchen, and it was just, she needed a good clean out. She did that clean out, and she immediately cut her sugar significantly just because she was able to step into the kitchen and make food.
That's so interesting. We're also conscious beings, right? Which I think is so unique compared to other species. And we don't always realize that all of these different powerful systems in our bodies work together.
100%.
And all of these different areas then of our external life play into that.
Preach.
Yeah. And that's why I always say, even from a detox standpoint, which is a lot of what I'm focused on, I say holistic because it's a body, mind, soul approach, and if you have one area of your life that's in chaos, it will trickle into some of the other areas. And it's so refreshing to look at things like a whole instead of just trying to pinpoint one problem and put a Band-Aid on it, so to say. And the behavioral change is what yields lasting results.
And I always like to think about a couple of things. Number one, as a functional practitioner, I like to think about root cause. We don't always get to the root cause, by the way, and that's okay.
Right.
But when we think about why we do the things we do, let's think about the root cause.
Yes.
So my friend with the messy kitchen, that was the root cause. That was one of the root causes.
Right.
And if I would have just handed her diet after diet, we never would have gotten where we needed to go.
Yes.
To improve her eating.
Yes. So you're really almost like a therapist in a way too.
I do say, I'm kind of like food therapy. People regularly cry on our calls, and I think that's
powerful.
So it's great. I'm like, hey, let that cortisol out. It comes out through our tears.
It's incredible. So you had mentioned in the bio how you've personally been through some of these challenges yourself.
Yes.
And maybe how that's given you a desire, perspective to help others. Will you talk a little bit about some of those challenges that you've personally experienced?
Sure. So stepping back, one of the reasons I was really interested in preventive care in the first place is the paternal side of my family. I would say well over 50% of the people in the family are diagnosed with type 2 diabetes
Wow.
and have cardiovascular disease. And I always thought about that and was like, whew, I want to make sure that doesn't happen to me.
Mm.
And wow, clearly there's a genetic component here. And what do we need to do on the lifestyle side to minimize that? My dad was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes at 35.
Wow.
So that's always been a part of my life. I remember when he was diagnosed and my mom bought all the diabetes books and the Sugar Busters book. And there was always a lot of chatter around that. We had like sugar-free ice cream and it was made with NutraSweets. Not very good.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
But so that was always an interest piece for me. And then, I became a dietitian, and another turning point was I had these 2 kids and I struggled health-wise for the first time in my life after having the kids. My mom's side of the family, almost all the women have hypothyroidism. And not everyone's been tested to know if it's the autoimmune kind, but yay, I have the autoimmune kind. My mother has the autoimmune kind, Hashimoto's. And I felt terrible. It took.
And that doesn't come on until...
It can come on at any time, but a very common time to end up with thyroid disruption or dysregulation and a diagnosis of a thyroid disease is after having children.
Very interesting.
So, but it took me 7 providers for somebody to take me seriously. I had, well, it's bad, but it's not that bad. Let's see what happens in 6 months. And I'm like, hey, I can barely keep my eyes open here. And then on top of that, I ended up with IBS, and a root cause, if you will, of that was small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which also is another common thing that can happen after pregnancy because your motility slows down during pregnancy.
Yeah.
So
and how did you find out that you had that?
That is when I sort of took things into my own hands at that point. I did have a lovely provider at the time who did support me in getting some testing done, and I did have a colonoscopy to rule out anything really bad. But at that point, I'd started my functional medicine training, my functional nutrition training.
Got it.
And was able to use a specialized diet and antimicrobial herbs to get rid of the SIBO. And underlying all of this, you're running a business, you have 2 little kids. I'm an overachiever, admittedly, 100, an A++ person. So nervous system dysregulation was a huge piece of this puzzle.
Absolutely.
So it took years to really get all the pieces in place. And I know we're going to talk about GLP-1s. A part of my journey has been utilizing semaglutide, one of the GLP-1 medications, which made a huge difference for me. Yes, I lost weight, but it wasn't so much about the weight loss. With all of this happening, I also was, my A1C kept trending up and up and up, and I kept thinking, oh my gosh, here I am doing a high fiber keto diet and nothing's working to keep my blood sugar down, on top of the hypothyroidism, on top of the IBS issues. What gives? And that combo of really sticking to a really good diet with the proper amount of protein, the right amount of fiber and whole foods to support my gut microbiome, plus the medical support, the pharmaceutical support with the thyroid medication and then the semaglutide. And I take a pretty low dose, but has been absolutely instrumental in not just weight, but my blood sugar's great. I don't feel like I need to worry about type 2 diabetes. My brain, I think clear. Actually came off of it for a period of time and went back on because I just felt better. I thought better. So my cognition was better. So I'm not shy about talking about that. I think when you think about your health, it is about utilizing all of the help that you need to get where you want to go. I always tell people with type 2 diabetes, the goal is not to keep you off medication. The goal is to keep your pancreas working as well as it can possibly be, working for as long as possible so that you don't have issues like kidney problems, neuropathy, those things we really don't want. So if we have to take some medication while we follow, a diet that keeps your blood sugar where it's supposed to be, great.
That's powerful. And I think something that I always want to encourage is, again, a holistic approach. There's never going to be a quick fix. And I think that's where traditional medicine has gotten a little abused, so to say, right? When we turn to medication and we forego the other lifestyle shifts that are also so powerful as resources.
Totally.
And it's when we can build that toolbox of resources from the perspective of both functional and traditional, there's real power. And especially with all the knowledge that we have available to us now and more clinicians such as yourself access to learning ways in which we can utilize it as a holistic approach and really do what we're trying to do, which is sustainably feel better for longer, right?
Yes.
And mitigate disease and improve longevity. That's really powerful.
And there is no shame in the medication help. Sometimes, in the integrative and functional world, there's this idea that, you can fix everything yourself with diet and exercise and stress management.
Yeah.
And maybe you can, but maybe you can't. And that's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. But you also agree that you can't fix everything with just medication.
Definitely not.
And that's where I think that it's cool that you're taking this unique approach of blending the two together.
They belong together. And we see this again and again in the research. I'm sure we'll talk about that. But they really do. Nothing is a magic bullet in this world.
Yeah. Explain to us a little bit about the research and why it's so important to include a holistic view and approach at everything.
Sure. So specifically talking about GLP-1 medications, when we look at the clinical trials for both semaglutide and tirzepatide, which were pretty well done. They had a lot of arms to these trials, a lot of things that they looked at. But one of the things that happened in both of these trials that just everybody got nutrition support. So they were meeting with a dietitian. In many of the study arms, they also got meal delivery services. And they also had exercise support. So training plans, checking in with somebody to make sure they were exercising and watching their step counts, things like that. So there's a lot of support to make these things happen in the background. And as a result, we see in the clinical trials incredible weight loss results, usually between like 15 and 26%, kind of depending on what extras were going on and what drug was used. 15 to 26% weight loss in a little over a year. So I think that's really powerful. And then we get to real life. And most people who are prescribed a GLP-1, they are not getting the dietitian support. They are not given anything maybe beyond like, hey, eat more protein. I've actually had a patient who said that somebody said, hey, as I was leaving the office, I said, what do I do with my diet? And the provider said, I guess you should eat more protein, and left the room. That's not enough. We've got more things to think about here. And the way we eat actually mitigates the side effects in many cases of the medications that people worry about. So if we're eating right, we don't have side effects, we can use the medication for as long as we need to and get the results we're looking for.
Absolutely. So going into some of those specifics, I guess whether you're on a GLP-1 or just wanting to eat to fuel your body, your blood sugar properly, what would you say are some of the core staples in how much protein we should be eating? And of course, it's going to differ per person, right? But like in general, as a woman in her late 30s.
Yes, love it.
How much protein, how much fiber do you recommend? And maybe what are some other core diet and lifestyle staples that you recommend to be balancing that blood sugar and or properly fueling yourself on a GLP-1?
Okay, great question. The cool thing about eating on a GLP-1 and not being on a GLP-1 is it's the same.
Amazing.
We do have to, we have to think about hunger levels on a GLP-1 and work through some of that side of the coin, but nothing is dramatically different. What's important, we're going to start with timing. Sure, if we are premenopausal, in perimenopause, we want to be eating 3 meals a day. Many women start fasting, right? You'll start like the intermittent fasting and you end up eating 2 meals a day. It is virtually impossible to get all the fiber and all the protein you need if you eat 2 meals and 1 snack a day. It's really hard. You have to be really thoughtful about it. And if you have a meal and you have 15 grams of protein, oh man, you're never going to make half your goal at that point. And what we also know is waiting that long, if you're doing an 18-hour or a 16-hour fast, you end up potentially creating a situation where you are adding more stress to your system that you don't necessarily need. It's not necessarily beneficial as some of your other hormones are going up and down and all around at that point in time.
Yeah.
So I think it's really important to be getting in your fuel. So breakfast, lunch, dinner. When it comes to timing, a good 12, maybe 14, but a good 12-hour fast overnight has been shown to be really supportive.
Got it.
To blood sugar levels overnight, to better sleep.
Yeah. And then that still allows for that like rest and restore value that you get from the fasting, but then still having the time in the day to get the proper fuel.
Exactly. Basically what it means is stop eating after dinner. We generally don't eat salads after dinner, right? This is not the time where we reach for the most healthy items, the
Right.
most unprocessed
Yeah.
items. Usually it's like wine and chips or something like that.
Yeah.
So obviously when you let those go, then good things happen. I also think it's really important to have a protein and fiber first approach to all of your meals. So we've heard so much noise, I would say, over the past 5 years about protein. How much protein do I need? And it can feel very overwhelming. And there's so many memes and things out there saying that getting in my protein in midlife is a full-time job, right? It can really
Yes.
feel like that.
It does, honestly, for me.
It's really interesting. Yes, it does require some attention. The older we get, the more leucine we need, which is an amino acid, to trigger muscle protein synthesis. And what that means to the average person is, your protein needs do go up over time in order to maintain or gain muscle.
Got it.
So think about when you were 20, 21, you had pizza for dinner and you had a sandwich for lunch, and maybe you ate breakfast, maybe you didn't, and somehow you were jacked, right? Your body was able to utilize whatever leucine was in the cheese in that pizza really effectively.
Yeah.
And you were able to, your muscle protein synthesis turned on with less leucine, essentially.
Yeah.
So as we get older, we just need more. So we need to pay attention. I think it's always a great idea to shoot for about 30 grams of protein at all of your meals.
Got it.
So that is always a great place. If you want to go a little bit more than that, I think that's great. But a lot of people are in a position where they're like, oh, I'm having 2 eggs for breakfast. I'm doing a little egg scramble. It is super healthy. That's right. But that's only about 12 grams of protein.
Totally.
So it's not enough, and we do need more food. Most of us midlife women have also grown up in an era where less is more,
Yeah.
Or we were told that, or we need to make sure we're not eating too many calories. Calories king. And calories are part of the picture, but we also have to think about how our blood sugar, our inflammation levels, our nervous system regulation, how all of those play into affecting what we weigh and how our body works. So protein first. Next thing is fiber. I hear from so many women that they're following a keto diet or a paleo diet. And basically what's happening is they're minimizing the amount of carbs, right? And it is true, we all have different carb thresholds. If you are more insulin resistant, you tend to not handle a lot of carbohydrates particularly well. Blood sugar goes up, start to feel fatigued, brain foggy, those sorts of things, bloated. But the key is not avoiding carbs. The key is seeking out those high fiber carbs. And at this point, I'll give a shout out to my favorite, the beans. So beans and lentils. So powerful to have a half a cup of beans and lentils. I'm not saying you need to do this at every meal all the time, but just as a great example, this is a place where you can get up to 8 grams of fiber
in a half a
carbohydrate.
cup. Got it.
And for women, we want about 25 grams of fiber in a day. Can you get more? Sure. But there was a trend that had a moment. It's called fiber maxing. I don't know if you saw that.
I love it.
It was where people were like, well, if 25's good, why don't I get 70?
Yeah.
Not that you can't do it, but not necessary.
Yeah.
Not necessary.
And then to your point, it's like you don't want to be like overburdening your body in other ways.
Exactly. Yep.
What are some other like fiber options for our meals?
Absolutely. So sweet potatoes are a great source of fiber.
Cool.
Our winter squashes, and actually cooked and cooled potatoes and rice contain a particular kind of starch called resistant starch, which is really great at feeding our gut bugs, our gut microbes that produce short chain fatty acids, which are like the ultimate antioxidant for the colon.
Interesting.
Yes.
So cook it cool, like put it in your, so then it's like great for meal prep. It's just in your fridge.
Yep, exactly.
Nice.
And you can actually reheat it and you'll still reap the benefits, which is cool. If the idea of cold rice doesn't
actually,
sound good.
Dr. Rhonda Patrick said that at a conference I was at recently too, and I thought that was so interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun little fact.
Okay, cool.
I also am a big fan of the bean and lentil pastas out there. So if you're a pasta person and using the Banza pasta or the red lentil pasta, it's a great way to have your pasta, but also get a lot of protein and fiber.
Yeah.
And quinoa is another great source of fiber. So we really want to think about, if I like rice, how can I make it a little bit more gut friendly?
Yeah.
So cook it, cool it, or use quinoa, or use the pasta that I mentioned. Those are some fun ways to not totally avoid carbs, but and make sure you get all the fiber you need.
Yeah.
Right? Also, berries are a great source of fiber. Fruit can be something that you put in your meal.
Yeah.
And then let's not forget our vegetables. I mean, everybody knows they need to eat more vegetables, but we really do, especially at lunches and dinners, I say fill half of your plate with vegetables. And trying to get different vegetables in throughout the week is a great strategy. Your cruciferous vegetables, so your veggies that look like a tree, your cauliflower, your broccoli, also your Brussels sprouts. Those are great for liver detoxification.
Absolutely.
So having those, I would say about 5 times a week can be really powerful. And then another thing that I think is so cool is if you look at the therapeutic diets that are out there and the health promoting diets from Mediterranean to more specialized diets, one thing they all have in common is a lot of dark leafy greens.
Totally.
So, and this is somewhere where I always suggest buying organic, but your organic spinach, kale, arugula, that is always a great place to spend your money and buy organic food or buy local.
Absolutely. And to your point, I think so many, going back to root cause, many of the diseases and issues that continue to be more and more common can be linked oftentimes to this overburden toxin load in our
100%.
bodies because we live in a more overburdened world.
We do.
But we also have bodies that are designed to detoxify naturally if fueled properly, right?
Exactly.
And so those cruciferous vegetables are such a fantastic way to fuel that detoxification process on a natural basis.
Yes.
And I think that is so cool and powerful.
Yes. I always tell people, you want to support your detoxification pathways. Number 1, make sure you're drinking enough water. You may want to consider filtering your water. Not a bad idea. Number 2, eating more cruciferous vegetables. So aiming for that 5 times a week. And number 3, sweating. So sauna, exercise, all the things are so powerful. And then noticing what's going on with your digestion. I always say, your eyes might be the window to your soul, but poop is the window to what's going on in your body. So if you are constipated, if you have diarrhea, one of the things we actually want to think about, especially with constipation, is how well is our liver working?
Right.
We don't have great lab tests to tell us if our liver is overburdened. The lab tests that we do have, then your liver is really overburdened and not working well. Non-disease states, we don't have a great way to know. So we really have to listen to the body and kind of know, and kind of get real with ourselves. Like, hey, have I been eating a lot of ultra processed foods lately?
Right.
Maybe I need to include some of those vegetables.
Yeah. That elimination is once again the body's natural best way to detoxify,
Absolutely.
right? We're removing those toxins from our body.
100%. And if we can't do that, then the liver is going to be overburdened because it's all going to keep recycling.
And the liver is connected to so many other areas of our body, including our mind and mental health, which is so interesting.
And I'd be remiss if I didn't say this too. You have 2 phases of detoxification in the liver. So phase 2, what's really important about phase 2 is it does require amino acids, and a lot of them. So I don't love juice cleanses.
Got it.
Because you end up, if you're on a strict juice cleanse, you don't get enough protein, and you actually don't get those amino acids that are needed to package up the toxins and send them out for elimination. We want to have enough protein available, as clean as possible if we're doing or paying attention to our liver health so that we can have the amino acids to package up and package up our toxins so they can leave the body.
So interesting. And a reason why the collagen's awesome because it's full of amino acids
It is,
and whole protein. Gretchen is a fan of the collagen.
I am a fan of the collagen. We put it in our smoothies regularly. I just had some in my tea this morning.
I love that. So cool. Okay, so when it comes to the GLP-1 side effects, what are some of the maybe issues that you help patients navigate when trying to add that as a resource into their weight loss plan, their overall health journey, while also trying to eat well and whatnot? Are things like what you hear often, like nausea and obviously low appetite. Like, how do these things come into play, and what are ways that you're helping your patients overcome those challenges?
Such a great question. So in the perfect world, I want for everyone who goes on a GLP-1 to have a 12-week boot camp where they really focus on getting the right amount of protein and really getting the right amount of fiber and addressing any digestive issues. The person who I see who has the most issues with nausea, constipation, bloating, etc., are usually people that are dealing with IBS-like symptoms from the get-go. So if we can
saying before the GLP-1?
Before the GLP-1.
Got it.
The things that a GLP-1 will do is slow down the motility in the gut. So if your motility is wonky in one way or the other, it's going to exacerbate that more than likely. So if we can help support that from the get-go, amazing. You might not have any side effects whatsoever. Other thing that's really great, and we have a really good we have a really good study to back this up. One of the Surmount trial, which looks at tirzepatide, the third arm, so Surmount 3, actually did a 12-week buy-in program, if you will, before medication, where they really didn't focus on gut health at all, but they just focused on good eating, proper nutrition. They were on a hypocaloric diet, but not severely, but getting the right amount of protein, eating real foods, etc. What they ended up seeing is actually they were looking at, well, if people start this the good habits with nutrition before they move on to taking the medication, what will happen from a weight loss perspective? And what we saw was about 5% more weight lost in a 72-month period.
Oh,
That's pretty powerful for a lot of people. And the other thing that tells me is that if people are able to lose that much weight, they're able to stay on the medication. The number one reason people come off the medication is side effects. So if we can eat right in the first place, we are minimizing the likelihood we're going to have side effects.
Yeah.
The other conversation I like to have with people is how to talk to your doctor about your dosage.
Got it.
Not everyone needs to be pumped to the max dose.
Yeah.
And a lot of times if you're working with a provider and they give you the medication and they say, hey, here's your dosing schedule, come back and see me in 6 months, you have to be the person to reach out to them if you feel like your side effects are too much. And I always say that if you can't eat a meal, if you sit down and you take 2 bites and you're done, that's not okay. If you can't eat at least half of a meal, then you should be talking to your provider. If you're vomiting, you should be absolutely talking with your provider about your dose.
Yeah.
If you are not going to the bathroom for several days in a row, you should be talking to your provider about your dose and or what you should be doing to support gut motility. And this is something I also work with our clients quite a bit on, is after starting GLP-1s, making sure we support gut motility as well.
What are some of the long-term risks with not managing the diet and lifestyle side while really just focusing on solely the weight loss from the GLP-1?
I think there's 3 things we really want to think about. Number 1 is sarcopenia, so muscle loss. And this is something I really worry about because 2 things need to happen to prevent sarcopenia during any weight loss journey, by the way. But we need to make sure we're eating the right amount of protein. And we need to make sure that we are strength training. If you are on a GLP-1 and not doing these things, just like if you were having a successful non-medicated weight loss journey, you probably would lose muscle mass. And at the end of the day, muscle is our metabolic tissue. It is the tissue in our body that utilizes our nutrients and our energy to have you function. So if you don't have, if your muscle is going away because you don't have enough raw materials as amino acids to grow the muscle, or you are not challenging the muscle enough through exercise, then you can wind up in a position years down the road where you're frail. And that puts you at a risk for falling, which then, of course, puts you in a risk for earlier death. I hate to be so morbid. We need to think about that, especially if let's say you start a GLP-1 when you're 50. What's happening when you're 70? And nobody wants to be in a nursing home.
Yeah. And then if you start a GLP-1 in your 30s and you go off of it and now have this like deficit of muscle to fat ratio, you are going to gain the fat back quicker, right?
Yep.
So it's kind of going to like cancel out then what you did on the GLP-1.
This is where we will see, as you lose muscle, we'll see your metabolic rates, how many calories you burn in a day, decrease significantly. So if you want to lose weight and keep it off, you must retain your muscle.
Got it.
There's nothing more important. Plus, there's a million other benefits to having muscle.
Yeah.
I also worry about 2 other things. Number 1, osteopenia and osteoporosis. When we are on a low-calorie diet for a long time, we are losing out on our micronutrients, and this can affect the bone, especially, if you think about midlife women, again, we know that we tend to lose bone mass in perimenopause and early menopause. That's when we start to see like the first high rate of bone loss happening. So we want to make sure that we're eating to get nutrients that are going to support our bones as well.
Absolutely.
And I have seen this happen where people did not do that. And then they wound up with the diagnosis, in their 50s or 60s of osteopenia or osteoporosis. Not ideal.
Not ideal.
And the muscle and the bone really work together because one of the best things you can do for your bones too is
totally
so important.
Yeah. Wow,
and then I
so
think about hormone health too. So thyroid and sex hormones. So we'll take like the perimenopause question, kind of off the table here. But if you're on a GLP, in order to maintain fertility and maintain optimal hormone function for your sex hormones, you do need to be eating enough.
Right.
So we talked about building the plate. We talked about the vegetables and the protein. And you also want to mention here, it's really important that you get enough healthy fats.
Got it.
So our monounsaturated fats, extra virgin olive oil. I always like to say like using that as your main cooking fat at home, salad dressing fat, utilizing that, eating avocados, olives, things like that you enjoy that contain fat. Really powerful way to support your sex hormones. And then again, not eating so little that you wind up suppressing your thyroid because that can dysregulate your thyroid function too.
So interesting. Do you have any suggestions or advice as to when someone should consider a GLP-1 as an additional tool? Like if, as you were mentioning, maybe they're working with you and they're doing kind of the eating enough protein, strength training, doing these things, and they're still not feeling like they're seeing any results. Like, is that the opportunity to maybe consider that? Or do you look at other root cause things first, like blood work, hormones, stuff like that?
Kind of a combination of the two. I would say if you have been on a weight loss journey and you are very diligent about all the things we talked about today, protein intake, fiber intake, eating real food, getting enough exercise, and the needle is not moving, then that is that at that moment is a question to say, maybe we should do some additional testing at this point in time.
Yeah.
Or consider where you're at in your life cycle too. I think the most important thing to look at from a lab work perspective, a couple things is number one, let's look at what's going on with your blood sugar. So we don't just want to look at fasting blood sugar. That's a great lab to have, but it's a single point in time. I like to get a hemoglobin A1C, which is like a 3-month snapshot of your blood sugar. See where you fall, because a lot of people are walking around technically with prediabetes. So we know you're insulin resistant if you are experiencing prediabetes. Another lab that is not often ordered that I really like is a fasting insulin. So when fasting insulin is higher, and we can actually do a formula with the fasting blood sugar and fasting insulin, it's called HOMA-IR, and we can find out if you are indeed insulin resistant. So if we're seeing insulin resistance, we know, first of all, I think it's important to say this. Being insulin resistant doesn't mean that you can't lose weight. It's not a barrier, but what it's doing is it's dysregulating your hunger and satiety hormones in the background.
Got it.
So a lot of times you're eating more and you don't realize it. Or, you're struggling with a lot of food noise, but you think you're not grabbing extra stuff, or maybe you are eating more high calorie foods because that's the only thing that satiates you. So I think it's important to know that. And then the other thing that I think is always helpful to look at is to look at an HSCRP, C-reactive protein. Kind of, it's not a perfect test, but it's a test that can tell us a little bit about chronic inflammation. And if that is high, then we want to think about, okay, well, what's contributing to that chronic inflammation piece?
Absolutely.
Whenever I'm working with somebody with weight loss, I really think about different pillars. So I think about what's going on with their gut health, because that can create a lot of inflammation when our gut is not in a great place. What's going on with blood sugar, and then what's going on with nervous system regulation. We could do a cortisol test. You can do, there's different like salivary 5-point cortisol test throughout the day. I don't think that's always necessary. I think that's always a great tool to see in black and white. Oh man, my stress is high in the evening. Or,
It's so interesting. And I think nervous system regulation is going to need to continue to become more and more important when we look at overall health.
Yes.
Because we're living in a higher and higher stress environment.
Yes.
Right. And so what are some of the ways that you address nervous system regulation, whether it's trying to help understand if that's playing a part in diet and health, and B, ways that you help support your patients in regulating their nervous system?
So when it comes to, it's a huge question and a very important part of the work that I do. So number one, with nervous system dysregulation, food actually is often a stressor for one reason or another. So I really like to help my patients figure out what are the lowest hanging fruits. You don't have to do everything. You need to do the things that are most important for you. So if that means maybe you're really good at getting protein at dinner time, maybe you just need to focus on breakfast. That's the meal that needs the most. And maybe you need to do a meal delivery service or something like that. Or maybe you need to recruit help when it comes to making things in the kitchen. Or maybe you need new ideas and a system. Those are the things that can, whatever we're doing with food, I like under most circumstances to make it less stressful. Sometimes when we do our therapeutic diets, it's for short term, not less stressful. But it's never the goal to continue on a therapeutic diet long term. And then the next thing is really thinking about how you feel in your body. I'm not a therapist. I refer out to therapists all the time. I love therapists, but a lot of times what we eat is related to past trauma, lots of different things that require work with a trained therapist.
Got it.
The role that I play is doing a couple of things. Number one, mindset. We are such jerks to ourselves in our heads, especially about food.
Yeah.
We're our worst bully.
So true.
So, why did I do that? I suck. I'm terrible. And then one of two things happen. Either we put on blinders because we don't want to hear the horrible things we have to say about ourselves in our head, and we overcompensate and become too restrictive. Or we say, I'm not going to hear that, and we ignore everything, and all of a sudden we're eating all the chocolate, and we're out to brunch, and we're buying chips from the grocery store by the handful or whatever, multiple bags. So we really want to be mindful that we're not mean to ourselves. And I like to educate on a self-compassion mindset.
Yeah.
Where we realize we're not alone. I love to relate to my clients. I have this problem too. Man, the other weekend we had a big old bag of Costco chips in our pantry, and I did not get out a small bowl to put the chips in. And I know I ate too many.
Yeah.
Okay, it happens.
It happens.
Not a big deal.
Yeah.
I'm going to put it back, and I'm going to make sure that I fuel myself appropriately. But if we can, number one, realize we're not alone. And then number two, emotionally distance ourselves from and not judge whatever the action was.
Yeah.
And just ask ourselves the question, what do I need right now? Or what can I learn from this?
That.
You are usually able to answer that question way quicker than you would imagine.
I love that. And I think that's powerful in anything that may be stressing us.
Absolutely. And then to your point, we do live in a super stressful world, especially with the phones and the technology. The rate of information and communication is extremely fast, and everything is always dinging and pinging us. And I think it's really too much across the board for us to handle. Remember, genetically speaking, we are thousands of years behind where we are right now.
Yeah.
So we have to institute, and I like to talk about this as mini timeouts, where we can just sit with our body and remind ourselves that we're safe. And this might look like prayer.
Yeah.
This might look like breath work. This might look like hiding under a blanket for a while. This can look like listening to music. There's lots of really interesting binaural beats is something that I really like, that different frequencies that can help actually promote more calming brain waves. So doing things that remind your body that you are safe, that is a somatic approach to nervous system regulation.
So powerful. Wow, I love that. What would you say, what type of a role does sleep play in our ability to maintain a healthy diet?
Oh, giant, huge.
Because I think we think of them separately sometimes.
We do, or you hear, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And that is, no, you won't be sleeping when you're dead. And you would have lived a better life if you did sleep.
Yeah.
It's interesting because there's only 1% of the adult population who can thrive, and be healthy on less than 7 hours of sleep. So chances are, if you're listening to this,
that makes so much sense. I always say that I need 8 to 9. That's just what works for my body. 7 to 9, I guess. But anything under 7, I really can feel it.
Yeah.
And there's so many people that are like, oh, I'm good on 5. I'm like, I don't know about that.
I know. We dig in session if that's your response. And then the other thing that's really interesting, I've talked, and I mentioned this a number of times. I think one of the root causes that we're just now starting to address when it comes to weight management is dysregulation of hunger and satiety hormones. And what we know is that we eat 300 to 400 calories more for getting 6 hours or less of sleep.
Interesting.
That's meaningful.
Interesting.
And Oh, we're not reaching for kale, my friends.
Mm-hmm.
So we're
Mm-hmm.
not reaching for chicken or shrimp or
Mm-hmm.
yogurt
Yeah,
or
no, so
chia
true.
seeds. We're, generally reaching for ultra processed foods because that's going to give us a little hit
Yeah.
that we need to get through our day with so little sleep. But we end up with way more ghrelin, which is our hunger hormone, and way less satiety hormone production. And we have lots of satiety hormones, but the satiety hormones that live in our gut, GLP-1, yes, we do make that naturally. No, the medication form is different. It's an analog. It lasts a lot longer. But GLP-1 that we make naturally, CCK, PYY, those all get very dysregulated. So if you've ever, gone through a period where you get less sleep and you're eating more, it's not just in your head.
Absolutely. Do you have any recommendations on how people can, if sleep is something that's tricky for them?
Yeah.
What are some tips to try and improve sleep?
Sure. If you suspect that you're in perimenopause and you're a woman, I do actually suggest getting an evaluated to see if you would qualify for hormone replacement therapy, because you can do all the tricks and do all the things and sleep in the dark, cold room and have nobody with you and all of that. And hormone dysregulation, or the slow decline of estrogen and progesterone during the perimenopausal phase, can really drive sleep problems.
Absolutely.
And again, I don't like for you to just keep, of course you have to do the right thing, but if this is your hormones being affected, there's help for that out.
There's help for that out there. And it's becoming more and more, I think, commonly talked about, which is such a blessing.
Yes, 100%.
Mhm.
And then we all, whether that's your situation or not, we all need to pay attention to the phone and the screen and the blue lights in our life. We're trying to dim the lights around bedtime, get off the phone. Read a real book can
Yeah.
be so powerful. Do a meditation, do, restorative yoga, something like that before bed. I talk a lot about getting in a bedtime routine. One of my favorite things to suggest is you get in your jammies and you brush your teeth, because if you brush your teeth, you're probably not going to eat anything, which is good.
Mhm.
Part of a good night of sleep is not eating for 2 to 3 hours before bedtime. That's very health promoting. And then setting up your room for success as best as possible. Not having pets in the room if you can help it. Although I will say, you can't do that
My
with a
dogs
puppy.
sleep in my bed, but they're also 10 and 12 and like,
If they don't keep you up and they're
no,
part of, then that's fine.
you're just
For my
saying avoid disruption.
just as much as you can. And
Mhm.
for my parents out there, of course, your 3-year-old, you're going to help them sleep, or they might sleep with you. Totally get that. You're just going to do the best you can.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a very real life example. Like I shared earlier, we have this new puppy, and new puppy does not sleep through the night. And I am somebody that needs a lot of sleep, or
Yeah.
I am not functioning well.
Yeah.
So tonight, hopefully, I will be going to my parents' house for a good night of sleep, because last night was particularly terrible. And sometimes, my friends, you just have to ask for help so that you can show up as the better person.
Absolutely. That's so powerful, girl. And it's so true. And I think, like you said, noticing, and instead of just like blinders on, keeping it moving, it's like taking a beat and saying, I need a good night's sleep tonight.
Yep.
The last few haven't been great, so I have to do something different.
Yep.
So going back to strength training just for a minute or two, I'm a big fan of it as well. More so, I mean, of course, I want to build muscle. And I think, the more and more I've learned about muscle and longevity and anti-aging and just overall health in general is so powerful. But nothing makes me feel as mentally good. It really does boost dopamine for me. What would you say is an ideal routine on a weekly basis? 3 times a week, X amount of hours? What do you think is a space that we can commit to get the benefits?
I'm not going to list out exercises. Do recommend that if you've never done strength training before, you find a trainer.
Yeah.
You can find somebody to show you around, show you how to use the weights safely at YMCA, community centers, etc. I definitely recommend that if this is something you've never done before. But I recommend starting with just 2 days a week.
Yeah.
For 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And there's lots of things that, a lot of people have the Peloton app. Great place to start and get consistent.
YouTube has resources.
Tons of resources on YouTube. One of my favorite people to follow in this realm is Dr. Stacy Sims. If you go to her website, she has has some really excellent programming, especially for women in midlife. Her tagline is "Women are not small men." She's a PhD and has done a lot of research on women in sports throughout the life cycle.
Amazing. Dr. Stacy Sims. I'm going to remember that. Cool. Yeah, I think there could be a fine line with I think it can be intimidating for people who've not weight trained before.
Yes.
So to know that there are resources and you can start small and just work it into your routine in whatever way works for you. And then B, overtraining, because like I said, I love how it makes me feel mentally, but I think there's this fine line with overtraining and underfueling that I've found myself walking probably too often because of prioritizing that dopamine versus I could use a rest day and how important rest is and recovery is for the body.
Absolutely. I will say, I'll share personally, this has been a thing for me. I've done CrossFit since 2011 and I really love it. I love the community. I love the workouts. But there was a period of time when my kiddos were babies where I would show up 5 days a week on 5 hours of sleep because I had to be with my people, right?
Yes.
And I wanted to do something that did not involve diapers. But the cost of not getting enough sleep, it definitely exacerbated some of my own health issues that I shared earlier in this podcast. And there was a year where I took almost a year off of doing CrossFit. And I think that was instrumental. It was right when I started thyroid hormone replacement. And that really, I think, kind of helped my body. I was still strength training.
Right.
I was still walking.
Right.
But I just had ratcheted down the intensity factor for a period of time.
Yeah. And that's important.
Yeah.
And just like everything else, it's finding a balance and something that we can maintain sustainably while not dropping the tools elsewhere in our life.
Absolutely. And if you're somebody who's more prone to overtraining, I get it. I've been there, but it's just really important you listen to your body.
I know.
Remind yourself there's nothing more important than sleep. This morning, I was supposed to do a one rep max deadlift. We've been doing a whole deadlift cycle for a long time. I have no idea how long, but it feels like 12 weeks, but it hasn't been that long. And I was excited. I was like, oh, I'm going to PR my deadlift. I didn't go this morning because I was not going to PR my deadlift, and I didn't want to hurt myself, and I needed that extra hour of sleep.
You needed the sleep.
So it's more important. Sleep always is more important than getting in the gym.
Absolutely. I love what you're doing because the opportunity to support weight loss in a well-rounded approach way is a really powerful thing. But I do think there's a lot of misinformation out there. And there are more and more, I guess, people, places, ways to secure weight loss medication without the additional tools. So where would you recommend people starting?
I think you can always start with your PCP and have a great conversation with your PCP. I also want to give a shout out to the direct primary care practices that are becoming more and more of a thing. Maybe you may know them as private practices, private primary care practices. The direct primary care model is really unique in that you can actually have a relationship with your doctor. Always something you can, if you feel like, oh gosh, I can never have a conversation with my PCP, I don't even know who they are anymore, and you're really looking for somebody who you can connect with for your care in general, looking up a direct primary care practice near you is a great place to start. But like I said, we're sort of in a complicated place. My role is because of the way the hospitals are set up, there's no great infrastructure for the diet and lifestyle side of GLP-1 support. So I do have a program where you can not only learn in one place all of the boulders, and what I mean by boulders are the most important habits that need to be taking place when you're on a GLP-1. So how much protein should you get for you personally? How much fiber should you get for you personally? How to mitigate side effects? All of that stuff, how to build your GLP-1 plate. What are some ideas on what to eat? So you can find all of that knowledge plus the behavior habit building support. You can know it all day. The knowledge is not the important part. It's how do you create systems to put this into practice for you. And what happens in our program is you get an email, which you can also click and get all of the emails in one place in a program, but you get a reminder every week like, hey, I just want you to focus on one thing. I just want you to focus on building a system around something. And then you're asked a prompt question, what system, what habit needs your most attention this week? And then how can you build a system around that? And then in addition to that, in the program, get lots of recipe suggestions, material. You get an AI meal builder, which is really cool. You can also opt in to sessions with myself or one of my other dietitians.
Amazing.
And then you get access to a food journal forever, and a really good one. It's like MyFitnessPal, but obviously included in the program.
Yeah.
And then sessions with me monthly as well, group sessions with me. And it's a one-time fee of $199. And the emails are dripped out for 6 months, but you get everything in here forever.
Wow. So people who aren't patients of yours today, who are interested in this type of support, can sign up for, what's it called?
It is called the GLP-1 Success Roadmap.
I love that.
And I actually have a special code for any of your listeners. If you put in it Cheeky in the coupon code, you will get $10 off.
Wow. So that's an incredible value. So you get all those resources, you get access to working with you, and you're really going to get that holistic support that is so necessary and needed. And to your point, what has made these clinical trials successful is that holistic rounded approach and ways to build sustainable health, which is what we're all here for.
Yes. I really think that weight management, losing weight, really needs a rebrand. It needs to be health first. We need to make sure we're not just decreasing calories at the expense of our muscle mass, our bone health. We need to be thinking strategically, like, how do I get the micronutrients that are going to support my body? How do I get the fiber to support my gut? How can I be 89 years old and running around with my grandkids? Because that's my goal.
Yes. Hell yeah, girl. I love it. So code Cheeky, where can they find access to you and the roadmap?
Absolutely. So you can find me on the socials. You can follow me at GLP-1 Nutrition or at Gretchen Spetz RD on Instagram. And you can also find me on the interwebs at GretchenSpetzRD.com / GLP-1 Nutrition for all things GLP-1 nutrition related.
Amazing. And we'll also put a link in the show notes so you guys can find Gretchen and all her resources easily. Is there anything else you want to leave with my community today as it relates to the work that you're doing?
Remember, you don't have to be perfect.
I love that.
I think we get stuck and we think, oh, no, I have to be perfect. Just start somewhere.
Yeah.
Doesn't have to be a Monday. Just say, hey, I'm going to drink 4 ounces of more water today. Man, if you did that for a month, well, you'd probably be drinking too much water. But if you just make these tiny incremental changes and you practice these changes knowing full well that you will mess up some days and you approach it with that self-compassion mindset, who will you be in 12 months?
So true.
You'll be a different person. And we don't do this stuff. You're not a better person because you eat a certain way. Your worth doesn't rest on what you look like or what you eat. What you're doing this for is so that you can support the most aligned and best life you want to live. I want you to go hike mountains if you want to hike mountains.
Amen, girl.
I want you to play with those grandbabies if you want to, at 89, if you want grandbabies. Like, that's the kind of stuff that I want you to do this for. Find your why.
Small changes really do yield such big results, and it's easy to get caught up on the big stuff and not realizes that it is these little things that we can add in slow and sure and really see some big change. So I think that's super inspiring. Gretchen, you're an incredible wealth of knowledge. I love this conversation today. I think it's so empowering for so many people. Hopefully you guys know, whether you're here locally or elsewhere, that Gretchen is here to be a resource for you. Please follow her. Please, if you liked this episode, like and subscribe at YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or wherever you listen to podcasts. For more conscious living resources, you can go to TheCheekyClean.com. To shop the collagen and other clean, safe products, you can go to ConsciousCart.com and follow me at both to continue to learn from real experiences and be connected with resources such as Gretchen.
Allie, thank you so much for having me today. I am inspired by our conversation. You are putting out so much good in the world, and it's my pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much, Gretchen. Appreciate you, girl. We'll see you next week, guys.